Iran's Revolutionary Guard has threatened painful strikes on the US targets if America resumes the war. Iran's supreme leader has said Tehran would secure the Gulf region and eliminate what he calls the enemy's abuse of the waterways. The comments follow reports that US President Donald Trump was preparing for fresh military attacks in Iran. Oil prices spiked to a 4-year high amid the uncertainty.
As crowds in cities across Iran pledged allegiance to their new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, he released a statement saying Tehran would secure the Gulf region and eliminate what he described as the enemy's abuses of the waterway and bring calm to the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices surged yesterday amid rumours the US was preparing for a short and powerful wave of strikes. Iran's Revolutionary Guard responded today, saying any US attack would result in long and painful strikes on US bases and warships, which did little to calm the spiralling markets.
In addition to oil and gas, fertilizers, which is very important for developing countries, petrochemicals, sulfur, they're all interrupted. So our world is facing a major energy and economic challenge.
Southeast Asian countries that get oil directly from the Middle East, like Cambodia, are among the worst affected. Nov Hut, a tuk-tuk driver, said fares have not increased with the fuel prices, making it hard to earn anything. And crops are at risk too. This farmer said the price of fuel used to power his irrigation system means he can't make any money from the ginger he grows. American farmers are more insulated, but this Trump supporter is still worried.
Sometimes you can bite off more than you can chew. And I've had some trepidation in terms of where he's going because there's a cost. And this energy cost is real.
Controlling that cost is arguably the biggest challenge Mr. Trump has faced. Fergal Gallagher, RTE News.
Well, our Washington correspondent Jackie Fox joins me now from the US Capitol. And Jackie, the US Defense Secretary is facing questions today at the Capitol, questions from fellow lawmakers. He has struck a defiant tone. How significant is this hearing?
Well, a lot is riding on this for Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth. It's his job today to convince senators, including some Republican senators who may be on the fence, that the war in Iran was and is worth it. And Tommy, this is against the backdrop of the War Powers Resolution. That says that the President must withdraw US forces from conflict within 60 days if Congress has not authorised it. Now, Congress has not authorised the war in Iran, and that deadline is tomorrow. US President Donald Trump has also not ruled out restarting that bombing campaign in Iran in what the US would see as a final blow to the country. Now, we know that Donald Trump is due to receive a military briefing from officials about the options today, but it does appear for now that he does not want to go down that route and keep those diplomatic channels open for now. It is being reported that Iran has proposed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz if the nuclear can be kicked down the road, but that's something that Donald Trump has rejected. It's also been reported that Pakistan is awaiting a new proposal from Iran that could come today or tomorrow. We'll see if that happens, and if that happens, does that kind of push things further? But for now, the two do remain in this standoff, both trying to portray this confidence that one will outlast the other and also try and inflict as much economic pain on each other as possible too.
Jackie Fox in Washington, thank you. For 18 months during his first term in office, John Bolton served as Donald Trump's national security advisor. That was until they fell out and the president fired him. Since then, Ambassador Bolton has been a vocal critic of the American president and has remained a strong advocate of regime change in Iran. Earlier today, I spoke to John Bolton. I began by asking him about that statement issued this morning by Iran's supreme leader, in which he declared that a new chapter for the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz was unfolding.
Well, I think that's a typical propaganda statement. You know, this supposed supreme leader hasn't been seen in 2 months, not seen in public, not seen in any manifestation of what the Red Cross might call a sign of life. And there are persistent reports ranging from him being dead to being in a coma in Qum, the holy city, under intense medical treatment. I think that the regime has been very badly battered, and I think that their internal disagreements really are causing them enormous difficulties. I think the region is changing because I think the Gulf Arab states in particular are simply not going to accept any longer the idea that the regime in Tehran can intimidate them. Now, that means there's still a lot of steps that have to be taken. But I think the regime in Iran is in deep trouble. And I hope that Trump adopts regime change as the right goal. I don't know that he will, but I've believed that for many years. That's the only way you're going to get to peace and stability in the Middle East.
You have said that you would like regime change. How would that change be achieved?
The opponents in the country are very, very widespread, but they're not as well organized as they might be. They lack resources. They could use telecommunications capabilities, money, weapons, a whole range of things. And I think as long as Trump is determined not to put any significant number of boots on the ground, we have to look to the people of Iran, not just to go into the street, but be pulling the regime apart at the top and opening the fractures that exist now because of the 6 weeks of bombing, talking to people, even in the regime itself, to say, look, this ship is going down and you don't want to go down with it. I think the regime is much weaker than it appears from the public image it's trying to project. And I think the people really are tired of it.
But Ambassador, is the problem not that there's no clear consensus on who should take over? And many critics would point to America's past. They would look at countries like Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. They would say these are hardly shining examples of regime change. And if America were to seek this in terms of Iran, is there not the real possibility that it could unleash total chaos?
Well, there wasn't any clear idea in the United States during the revolution who would succeed George III, but somehow we stumbled our way through it. I think the Iranians can do the same. Nobody's going to impose a regime on the people of Iran from the outside. There's an extensive Iranian diaspora in Europe, in North America. I'm sure they'll have something to contribute, but we're not talking here just about finding one person to replace the supreme leader. The entire regime, this group of fanatic, religious, militaristic authoritarians is got to have to be replaced. And the people of Iran need space to have a really widespread consultation on what sort of system of government they want once the Ayatollahs and the Revolutionary Guard are gone.
Of course, so Donald Trump says regime change has already been achieved.
Yeah, of course, he's wrong about that. I mean, there are different faces because we probably eliminated 300 or 400 of the top leaders in Iran. But it turns out, contrary to what many people said for years, that just take it easy with Iran, everything will be fine, the revolution will moderate, and these long-sought moderates will come out and they'll act like a normal government. Turns out that's been wrong for 47 years. The lower-ranking people, if anything, are as hardline or more hardline than the people who are now meeting their maker. So I don't see this as regime change at all. I think that's Trump trying to put a good face on things.
You served as Donald Trump's national security advisor during his first term. Did you ever advise him to pursue that regime change that you talk about now? And if so, why didn't he do it?
Well, I did recommend that as the policy we should pursue, and he didn't accept it. He did say, and I think we followed the correct line on saying we were never going to accept an Iranian nuclear weapons capability. And I might say that Trump was being told by Bibi Netanyahu in the first term that regime change was the only answer. So for those who say somehow Israel conned Trump into pursuing regime change, I would bet a significant amount that what Netanyahu has said in the second term is exactly what Netanyahu said during Trump's first term. So whatever moved Trump to authorize military force, both last summer and the 12-day war and on February 28th of this year, there's some different factor in the works than there was back in the first term.
Would the Pentagon have known that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz was a real possibility if Iran was attacked in this way? And if so, where is the plan to force its reopening?
So all of this was well known, and I think the Navy and other parts of the military are fully prepared to take action if they're given the order to open the Strait of Hormuz. I think we can do it. In fact, I think at the moment we should do it. We should continue the blockade against any Iranian exports of oil and gas, but we should open the strait for the export of the Gulf Arab states' oil and gas.
The American president has been very critical of NATO and his European allies. What does all of this mean in terms of the war in Ukraine, which of course continues?
Well, it's interesting. Trump and Putin had a telephone conversation yesterday, and I think Putin was trying to suggest he could mediate between the U.S. and Iran, and Trump turned him down, saying, really, you ought to worry about the war in Ukraine. We'll worry about the war in Iran. I don't see at the moment that Trump's going to change any policy one way or the other on Ukraine. Probably if he doesn't pay any attention to it in the near term, that's the best thing that could happen.
To focus on an Irish issue, if you don't mind, the use of Shannon Airport here in Ireland as a transit hub for US military is a controversial issue here. And at times like this, it comes into real focus. Many in Ireland would argue that the arrangement between the US and Ireland in terms of Shannon should come to an end. From your experience in government, what would the consequences be if Ireland were to end that relationship?
Well, I think it would make things much more inconvenient for the United States. But the use of Shannon really began when the range of aircraft was more limited than before, when you could barely get across the Atlantic Ocean and you need to refuel either at Shannon arriving in Europe or at Shannon departing from Europe. I've been there many times myself on military aircraft. I think it would be a mistake if Ireland took that decision. I think, like the rest of Europe, I think perhaps people don't understand this war against this group of authoritarian religious fanatics seeking nuclear weapons in Iran is just as much Europe's war as it is America's.
Just finally, Ambassador, you worked as Donald Trump's national security advisor for 18 months. You have set out today what you would like to see him do in Iran. But based on your experience of dealing with him and knowing him the way that you do, what do you think is actually likely to play out over the coming weeks and months?
Well, I think he's looking for a way out, but he's afraid of making a deal that would make him look weak. He doesn't know the answer at the moment, so it's impossible for anybody else to predict. But I do think that as the days go on, the potential to renew military activity increases. There were a lot of targets we didn't hit. There are reports that the Iranians have begun to dig out some of their underground storage facilities, bringing out missile launchers that were trapped inside, bringing out missiles and drones. I think that's great. Let him bring a lot of it out, and then we can go back and destroy that too.
Ambassador John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, thanks indeed for speaking to us on 6-1.
Well, thanks for having me.